Needs to be like a warning on the set of scriptures. Warning, it may cause assholism.
Yeah, religion is a deadly addiction.
And we're here to help people through their withdrawal symptoms.
You're neutering God.
They say it's a holy book.
They didn't say what hole.
Good evening and welcome to the Church of Awesome.
The church to end all churches.
I will be conducting today. I am Cardinal Imam Spencer, son of Hagar.
Peace be upon him.
Presiding today, we have the Demi-Pope, Chris. We also have the Archangel Michael.
Yeah.
And Bill. Today we will be discussing religion. What harm does it do? Leading our discussion will be the Archangel Michael.
Hear him.
So a question that we get asked a lot is, let them have their faith. I mean, it's not hurting anyone. What harm does it do? Well, I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and I've constructed a list, 4 categories so far, and this list, by the way, took almost no time to compile because there's so many goddamn answers to that question. I have categorized it into lost time, lost money, emotional health, and death. And we'll start with lost time. Just at the top of my head, I can think of losing time in once a week for a few hours on the Sabbath, and depending on which church you go to, it could be 1 hour block, 3 hour block, or an all-day event. Social events or other meetings during the week. It could be any kind of events or supplemental classes or what have you. There's time spent reading scriptures, time spent pondering the scriptures and the gospel, time spent teaching children superstition, time spent praying, and time spent preaching the gospel, which, depending on what church you're going to, that could be every weekend for your entire childhood, or set aside 6 months, 10 months, 2 years, 3 years. It really depends. So what are our thoughts on lost time? Did I miss any?
Well, and those aren't necessarily 100% lost. It's just not used to the maximum efficiency. Like you say, teaching kids superstition, you're still spending time with your kids, and you can kind of teach them morals at the same time that you're teaching them that. But it's...
Well, it's silver lining on a bullshit cloud. That's what that is.
Yeah. Well, and like praying, you can say it's meditation, relaxation, and stuff like that. So it's, not entirely lost. But it's time that could be used better.
And it's time that you're not necessarily going to use to do something productive all the time. I remember when I was a kid, one of the things I liked about, the fact that I wasn't allowed to do anything on Sunday was it was a day to just kick back and relax. I mean, I wasn't really doing Jesus-y things all week or all day. I was just kind of sitting back and relaxing.
Yeah, watching football.
Yep.
Watching the Jesus Football League. The JFL, as they call it.
But for example, time spent pondering the gospel, you could be applying thoughts to something useful. You could be doing homework for school, or taking time to read new and useful things
instead of the same book over and over again
and learn shit.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I've learned, it's never trust someone who reads the same book over and over again.
I don't know. When I was a kid, I did book report on Treasure Island 6 times. I got a lot of mileage out of that.
Yeah, I think we all did that trick.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not like, how do you know when I read it to you? Are you checking with my past teachers? I don't remember specifically doing that, but it seems naive to think I didn't do that, so... but that's a great... I don't just know that spends only reading one book. Yeah, it's just, I'm someone who limits my input, my options.
Yeah.
But, time spent preaching the gospel... I know a lot of former Jehovah's Witnesses that are just flat out burned out on Jesus because every weekend they had to go door to door and proselytize. Any good feelings left they're gone because it's that's all my life was, and I'm just sick of it. It's funny because it's almost regardless of what the consequences are for not believing anymore or not going to church or not obeying God's laws.
I just can't do it.
I just can't bring myself to care anymore. Yeah. It's you're spent.
Yeah, well, a lot of times you're trying to talk to your neighbors and friends about religious stuff, and you kind of burn bridges.
Yes.
By making your friendship contingent on this religious aspect, and so you kind of alienate your neighbors and friends that
Oh,
way.
I know.
So it's that's a huge loss.
I know. I lost all of my religious friends when I left. Mm-hmm. And not really because I didn't want to be friends with them anymore, but more because they didn't want to They didn't want to be friends with me anymore.
Yeah, because you would lead them down the path to destruction.
That's right.
Then you were you were no longer worth a time investment because you were what they call less active, right? So they saw you more as a prospective active person, a prospective elder, a prospective.
Well, you never told them to just go fuck off like we did. So yeah,
That's true.
so they always held out hope.
Although two people have sent missionaries to me, like they sent my name as a reference to the church headquarters, and then they contacted me.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's two different unrelated people sent. I was like, oh, interesting that you care.
Yeah.
But
Well, care in parentheses.
yes,
It's interesting that you something.
it's a special type of care.
Yeah. Glad that you thought of me when your bishop said, "Hey, can you refer somebody?"
We need more money.
Yeah.
You know any suckers?
Well, this sucker's given us money in the past, so.
So last time we good on that? Mm-hmm. We've lost. That's a lot. I mean, like I'm just thinking of like social events and other meetings during the week. Like you can get a 3-hour block and then classes on Wednesday and Thursday nights, and then because they want to keep you inside the cult sometimes, and they're like, well, if he spends time with someone who's not the member of the same religion, then they might learn things about other people's religion and might leave us. So
Well, they'll just start exerting another influence on them, and it's like the influence needs to all be in one direction.
yeah. We don't want you to have total control over your finances or any other aspect of your life, or your time. Your time is ours now.
Yeah.
Are you going to short God on your time?
Yeah.
So, lost money while we're on the subject. The first one, the obvious one, tithing money or donations,
Collection plates and.
Yeah, because you can get guilted into giving tons of money, whether you have it. Tithing, I think the word itself means 10, like a tenth. So it could be up to a tenth of your your gross income, right? Like your actual, not the smaller number after taxes, but the bigger number before taxes. And if you're in a cult like Mormonism, it's if you don't pay this, you're going to burn. Literally, there's scripture saying if you don't pay your tithing, you'll be burned at his coming. And also, to go to heaven, the proper higher level heaven, you have to be married in the temple. But to go into the temple, you have to be a full tithe payer. So that's how they really extort you into giving them your money.
And other religions do that too. I mean, you see like the Crystal Cathedral, huge, massive thing all built on donations of people. Televangelists the same way. They just give me all your money and just have faith that things are going to work out.
Yeah, they don't assert the control like the Mormons do. Usually it's like there's a plate being passed around, and if you want to throw some money in there, cool.
Yeah.
But it's not like you'll burn.
Well, they just say they guilt you the same way. It's just.
But they're not saying you won't go to heaven if you don't throw in this large chunk of money.
I don't think they say that outright, but I think they strongly imply it. Yeah.
It's more you'll burn if you don't give what you can.
Yeah.
And then they guilt you into thinking that
What you can give is a lot.
Isn't enough,
Yeah.
Not what you actually can, but what,
Yeah. And it's kind of one of the strengths of churches as an institution. I mean, like, unlike churches like ours of free thought, where people, can weigh the benefit of doing different things. They're just like, give us lots of money, give us lots of money. So they have lots of money, and with that money, sometimes they do good things like, helping foreign nations or, building houses for poor people or something like that. But then you look at the actual structures that they build for themselves, and they just dwarf anything else that they're doing.
Yeah, it's like most charitable organizations where a very small percentage of what you donate actually goes to the cause. And
I don't think that's a fair assessment.
Well, I mean,
some charitable I'm sure there's.
I'm not saying all. I'm saying many of them. I digress. Oh, the other problem with tithing is that not everyone has the same amount of disposable income. People say, "Oh, it's only 10%." Well, it's fair because if you make less, you pay less. Well, if you're uber fuck rich, then you can afford to give a ton more because you have more disposable income.
Yeah.
If you're poor, like all your money is going to food and clothes and rent and stuff like
Exactly.
that. So
we need a progressive tithing structure.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Well, that's Mormons tend to be fans of the flat tax because
Which, on the face of it, sounds fair, but once you think about it, like most religious sayings, as soon as you start thinking about it,
Yeah.
you go, "Wow, that's a really bad idea." Or
yeah.
that's
Well,
utter
it's not that it's necessarily like, oh, that's a straight up bad idea, but economically speaking, you can look at it and you're like, yeah, it's a technically regressive tax that punishes proportionally people that have less more, and the people who have more it punishes them less.
It is interesting to think, because almost by definition, a flat tax is regressive.
Yes.
It's sort of just an illusion.
Yes.
It's an illusion of equity. That's interesting. But that's not the only thing. The tithing donation isn't the only place you can lose money. I mean, you can, you can do little things like you had to spend more on a quote unquote modest prom dress, or you get a little stupid shit, or if you buy things that you don't really need but think you do because Jesus is coming, or whatever. But the big ones that
Sell your house and all your possessions because to buy billboards and RVs with paintings on the side of them.
That could never happen. Come on.
Yeah, there is investing in a pyramid scheme because your bishop recommends it. That's one where they've built up this relationship of trust that they really haven't earned. It's just Jesus said he's in charge, and therefore he's trustworthy. So you can get
Well, it's the
fucked
same.
that way.
It's the setup is so much the same because you're trained to, like, if the same skills are involved and everything. You've got, when a pyramid scheme gets into a church, then it's able to just run rampant because the same skills are needed for, converting people, getting people to trust you and to follow you, and the hopes of big payoffs with little investments.
And you're dealing with a group of people that's already prone to falling for it.
Yeah,
Right.
They're preconditioned to accept things like that.
Did I ever tell you about the time where I almost got in on one of these things? Where I was about 16 or 17, and they were like, "Hey, so you want a job?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I guess I can't say the name of the thing, but it was one, or should I? I don't know.
Say it, we'll edit it out if we think we should.
The International.
Yes, Nani Juice.
Oh, yeah. So you heard
I'm
of it?
familiar with that. Yes.
Yeah, it was interesting because I forget exactly how I got the job offer, but basically I went to their office, and it was one of those like businessy centers where it had a suite inside that thing, and like it was very minimal staffing. I went in there and I talked to like the guy who I guess would be the middle manager. I was asking him, I was like, so what is this product? What does it do? And he would never really tell me exactly. Like, he would say things like it's miraculous and it cures all kinds of diseases and stuff, but in very non-specific terms to make it sound a little more magical. But, like, it's the product to end all products. And then, like, and you can look us up on the internet, as if, like, we're transparent. Look it up on the internet. And so I look up on the website, and it was the same thing. Where,
Close
like,
marketing.
yeah, it was just, it does this and it does this. It doesn't explain how or why or what's even in it. And I remember the thing that kind of just made me go, raised eyebrow, I'm out, was said, well, one of the things that I really like about this company, the male manager said, is that I really respect the leadership. Like, it's a good company, with of men of faith, because it was like there were like Mormon posters on the wall. They're like those motivational posters, but specifically Mormon motivational posters, and like, okay, it's like I'm not getting any real facts. And this, I was still a total believer. I still bought all of the Jesus stuff, and it's like, what? Something doesn't feel like I'm not getting anything solid, and it's all like this bishop says it's a good idea, and so I said no thanks, and I left, and then I found out later, like, it was a classic pyramid scheme where they hire you, then you have to buy a whole bunch of the product, and then you just end up with a garage full of
Stuff you can't sell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Mona V, or
Mary Kay.
Mary Kay. Or
So and that was because I was headhunted because I was a member of the church, and it said, "Oh, here's a nice young Mormon boy, and he'll do,
he falls for lots of other stuff. He'll probably fall for this.
Exactly, like,
Yup. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, Amway was the huge one. And all of my friends' parents had Amway. For some reason, my parents didn't fall for it, but it's like you'd go over to their house and all their soap was Amway and all their dishwashing detergent and everything. It's like every goddamn thing in their house was Amway. It's like, so who else are you selling this to? No one.
Yeah.
Right.
Another one that I saw was I thought of was buying a home in a bad area because it's near a church or because God told you to because you felt it was the right thing to do, or just picking up and moving to a different location because we need to take an take a pilgrimage to whatever
To Zion.
or we're moving to Zion.
Well, there's plenty of people that they, will move towards a church because they think it's a better neighborhood because it has a church.
Yeah, because there's a clear moral center there, and people are good around churches, and people won't mess with it. Yeah.
And so house prices are higher because there's a church there.
And you could lose a ton of money that way.
Oh yeah.
What other obvious money losing way things? They're from being religious.
Just giving up on opportunities that would have worked out, but you didn't.
Not taking a job because Jesus told you not to.
Or just
because you had to work on Sunday.
Exactly.
Yes, that's a good one.
Or just because it's involved in an industry that maybe is like, you're like, oh, this, it's working for a video distributor, but they also distribute pornographic films. So that would, if there's something like that where there's, a tinge of something that you think is evil, then you wouldn't take the opportunity, even if it's good for you individually.
Yeah, another thing is like, I had a job at the and I was still a believer and didn't work on Sundays, and they would not accommodate for that, and it really frustrated me and kind of almost soured my relationship with that company because they weren't able to do that. I mean, I guess I had no seniority, so they're not really obligated to be flexible on it. But it was like the one thing I asked for, like the only thing I ever asked for was this, and I almost never got it.
Yeah.
And really, actually, it all worked out okay in the end because I stopped going to church and it gave me more time to think. And
and you had an excuse to not go to church. You're like, well, I can't go to church.
Yeah. By that time, I was already very, very unhappy with it.
Yeah.
So, but it helped. But by the way, let's not pretend that that's why I went inactive or left the church because I worked on Sundays. No, there's a lot of things called evidence. And,
Yes, it was because you were breaking the rules. You weren't in the right spirit.
Yeah. Oh, I hate hearing my own voice from the past.
So what else do we lose?
We lose. The next one is emotional health. This is massively large, but I'm gonna just the ones that came to my head. Social life and sometimes career is dependent on your adherence to the faith. And this, depending on what kind of cult you're in, or even just a regular mainstream church, if someone gets a sense that you're a non-believer, that they may inherently trust you less, whether it's conscious or not on their part if they're a believer. Leaving a church has social implications. Your friends are no longer your friends. Your family may or may not be your family anymore. The church may hunt you down and harass you if you become a problem or speak out against the church.
Yeah, like Scientology.
Exactly.
Shiny example.
Yeah, you could get kidnapped and all that stuff. There's emotionally, you're living under constant supervision. You are constantly a disappointment. You have a warped view of reality. You are lied to about a lot of things, and you may become an asshole.
What do you mean may?
Yeah, there needs to be like a warning on the set of scriptures. Warning, it may cause assholism.
Yeah, assholiness.
Yes.
This book of assholiness.
Ass holier than thou.
They say it's a holy book.
Yeah.
It didn't say what hole. Yeah.
Exactly.
Here's another one. You may be tied down to an unpleasant lifestyle, unhappy marriage, or being a polygamist wife, or heterosexual marriage if you were actually gay. That's pretty big. Then you could be harassed by an aggressive cult like Scientology for becoming an annoyance to them, as like we said earlier. Got so much material in just that last one.
Or just having to put on a happy face because they, especially in American churches, it's like, your happiness is evidence that you're following the religion properly. So if you're not happy, then that's evidence that you're doing something wrong. So you always have to put on this happy face,
Yes.
even if you're not happy for reasons that could have nothing to do with religious adherence or anything like that.
Yeah, life.
Yeah.
But there's also like the perfect
Chemical
wife
imbalances
syndrome,
in your
right?
brain.
Yeah.
Where if you're aiming for perfection, if you believe the scripture, be perfect as I am perfect, and that's your goal, and you want to be like God, like in Mormonism, and I'm sure other ones do the same thing, like you have to be perfect to be saved, then you're going to get elective surgery, abuse prescription drugs or Diet Coke, or get get a tummy tuck, boob job, and all this stuff to look more perfect, because that's the goal. Because that's because it'll make you look better, it'll make your family look better, and you're portraying this image that there is perfection, and everyone's going towards this. And
Well, then on top of that, the inability to maintain perfection, which is just inevitable. Nobody is going to attain that. And so the fact that you are constantly failing to reach your goal is very depressing. I mean, one of the biggest things you try and do in goal setting is make them realistic and attainable. And what is perfection? Neither of those. So of course it's going to cause stress, anxiety, can lead to depression.
Yeah.
And you've got conservative lifestyles, right? So the gender roles are very firm and set. And so if you're trying to have a career, well, you can't, because you got to be spouting out children entities. So you and if you don't have kids, then
You're seen as a failure.
You are a failure, exactly.
Oh yeah, there's nothing quite so devastating for a woman of one of these kind of religions if she's barren.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Well, and even there's this whole other side to this argument that we're just talking about a generic, we'll say male, but for women, this list is 10 times as long.
Oh yeah, it'd have to be. Yeah, I can't think really from that perspective.
Yeah.
I have ideas, but yeah, there's certainly, I've got some great women stuff later in the list.
Yeah, we're not really used to being treated as second-class citizens.
Yeah.
So kind of hard to relate.
Yeah. I mean, it worked out well for us because we have penises.
Yeah. And we're white, so that's...
Yeah. Do we want to go on to death?
Well, I want to stick on this with mental health issues.
Yes, actually, please go on, because you're the one I want to hear.
One of the classic things is how religious people treat mental health disorders.
It's demons!
Exactly. I mean, the mental health field didn't even get started until about 100 years ago. And even at that, it was not really a science until about 40 years ago.
Which I guess kind of makes sense, because we didn't really have any of the technology to understand any of the stuff anyway.
We didn't.
We have the technology.
For thousands and thousands of years, any psychological disorder was...
You mean
just
6,000 years, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
All we see are people misinterpreting psychological disorders as possessions by the devil or some demon or some such mumbo jumbo like that. And what did they do to these people? They either tried to exorcise the demons, or they burned them at the stake, or they just ostracized them from the community, or they locked them up in horrendous prisons.
They drilled holes in their head.
Yeah, gave them lobotomies, very crude lobotomies.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, not good to be to have a mental disorder.
And even now.
Even now.
If you're in little happy Christendom, and you're supposed to be the happy little housewife or happy little worker bee, and you're dealing with a chemical imbalance in your brain, a physical, problem like any other illness. For some reason, there's no, if you have to take Lipitor because you have high cholesterol, there's no stigma there. But if you have to take Prozac, oh Jesus, what's wrong with you? You're obviously not following the commandments of God. Otherwise, why would you be afflicted with this terrible thing?
I find it interesting that we still have this attitude of there's something bad in your life, therefore you are the cause of it because you must have done something wicked.
Yes,
even though in the New Testament Jesus himself gave a specific example saying, no, this man is not blind because of any sins that he did or those of his parents. It was there so that the power of God could be made manifest. telling us that there are possibly other reasons why someone would be afflicted with something. I mean, obviously the Jesus thing is bullshit, but according to their own scriptures, it's not necessarily a sin that they committed. It's in there. It's expressly written. That's not even interpretation. That's fucking in there.
Yeah.
Of course, it's also in there that, if you, a sin against God will be, manifest upon 7 generations afterwards with some kind of curse,
But he's a just God, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking idiot.
Well, it's also in there that you're supposed to be communist, so.
Yes.
Yeah. and in some parts, you're supposed to hack off your genitalia.
Yes.
Just part of it.
So, can we do drinks before death?
Sure.
Cool.
Drinks before death. I love that.
Sit back and relax as we commune with the spirits. Today I am communing with Lagavulin 16 year. This is one of my top, 20 or 30 malts in the world. Actually, it's probably like top 5, but it's a Isla single malt. It's one of the Diageo classic malts. It's the one that they chose for specifically Isla, and it's the smokiest of all the Islas. It's like drinking a campfire.
Yeah. So in my never-ending war against sobriety, I have chosen as my weapon of choice the Balvenie Caribbean cask, aged 14 years. This is finished in rum casks, so it's got a little rum sweetness going on there, which added to the Balvenie sweetness already. It's like drinking candy, man. It's just fantastic.
Well, I'm once again on call for work, so I'm going to be the responsible one, and I may be driving these booze warriors out later in the car. So what I'm communing with today is the Adwala Superfood, the original superfood micronutrient fruit juice drink. I actually really like this stuff.
So it's noni juice?
Yeah. Yeah, it cures cancer. No, it's actually good because I don't often feel like hungry enough to eat real breakfast in the morning, and plus it just has a shitload of vitamins and stuff like that because I'm way too lazy to get fruit because fruit goes bad. It's a crapshoot to get fruit anyway. And it takes a long time and multiple trips to the store to get shit. Like, I just want this big drink device that I can just get all my vitamins and shit out of the way. And because I'm way too lazy to cook.
Cheers.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay, sobriety. Okay, are we ready to talk about death?
We are.
Always.
And how?
There are a gajillion examples of this, and usually the go-to example is, lots of wars and genocides are carried out in God's name. I'll get there, but that's not the only thing. Like, kind of ones that are more kitchen table, hitting home, and all that shit. I'll run through the list, and then we'll talk about them. Okay. 1, people relying on their faith to heal them so they don't go to a doctor, and they suffer from non-treatment. People relying on their faith to heal them so they refuse medical treatment once they're there, like refusing blood transfusions, organs, and or medication. People relying on their faith to heal them so they try to use their fictional superpowers to heal the sick. People relying on their faith to heal them so they hire someone else to try to use their fictional superpowers to heal the sick. Having more children than you can handle because God wants you to have a big family. That actually falls under losing money too. But really, and there's people who die because they try to have so many kids that, but God wants us to have a big family. Or I just feel spiritually that we're supposed to have 6 children and we only have 5, and I need to bring this. There's a soul waiting on the other side, waiting to come in. Yeah. And then she fucking dies. You have your baby dying because you didn't go to the hospital for the delivery. That's one. There's breatharianism, snake handling. I'll talk about those in a second. There is being killed for not obeying God's laws and suicide. And there's a couple more. So from the top, people relying on their faith to heal them so they don't go to the doctor. There's lots of examples of this.
Yeah, and that's not just faith in religion. That can be faith in
pseudoscience or
just some sort of mysticism or something. Like I have these healing crystals or something like that. That
healing power of magnets.
Yeah, how do they work?
Fucking magnets.
Yeah. Or just people who say if I just eat all organic food, then it'll
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about a few specific examples. There is my new favorite site. It's called whatstheharm.net. I just go right to the site and you'll see dozens of examples.
Yeah, we'll put a link to it on our website.
Sure.
Churchofawesome.com.
I'll throw up 3 real quick because they're right in front of my face. Nancy Brewster, age 7, from El Paso, Texas, died untreated cancer in September 29th, 1963. She got a lump on her neck at 5 and soon was too sick to go to school. A Christian Science practitioner prayed for her and said the illness was an illusion. When she died, there was no funeral and her family never spoke of her again. Ian Burdick, age 15, Sherman Oaks, California, died untreated diabetes November 10, 1987. A Christian Science nurse practitioner was treating Ian, but he had juvenile diabetes. He was 5'8" and only 87 pounds when he died.
Jeez.
Yep. That one's really, really fucking long. Jim Henson, the famous puppeteer, same story. Untreated bone cancer, untreated diphtheria. Yeah, it's.
Was Jim Henson a Christian Scientist or something?
I believe he was, and like when he first died, the official story was he didn't go to the hospital because he didn't want to be a bother, which is such fucking bullshit. And it's like, no, it's because his religion's, told him to not go to the doctor. It was all a matter of righteousness and all that shit. So he fucking died. Untreated pneumonia, untreated bone cancer, meningitis. Natalie Rippenberger, aged 8 months, Santa Rosa, California, died December 9, 1984. She contracted meningitis, which can be treated with a 92% success rate, but her parents hired a Christian Science practitioner. She suffered for 2 weeks and died. Both parents were convicted of felony child endangerment. Yeah, fortunately, sometimes these fucker parents, have to pay a little bit, but
get what's coming to them. And I guess that says something good about us that, and we talk about this sometimes, how it's like when put to the test, a lot of times people will, go with what science tells them works versus, what religion tells them works. And we'll notice that in a lot of these, it's someone who's acting on behalf of someone else. A lot of times it's not the person who refuses treatment, it's the person who refuses someone else treatment.
I got those too.
Yeah.
Load up the Jehovah's Witness page. There's several of them. Refuse transplant, refuse blood transfusion.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on and on. So that's why I didn't prepare specific examples. Because there's so goddamn many of them. So you have, they don't go to the doctor, or if they do, they may refuse medical treatment. People trying to use their fictional superpowers to heal the sick. They believe they have the gift of healing. So instead of going to, actual physicians, they lay their hands on them, or they'll throw holy water on them, or I don't know, whatever stupid shit they do.
Wave magnets around them.
Yeah.
Pray for them or whatever.
Or they'll hire someone else who is holy and has similar fictional superpowers. Yeah, there's, oh my God. There is a belief that I never even heard of called breatharianism, and it really sounds like I made that up, but I did not. It is the belief that you could survive, that you can live without any subsistence, without any food or water or anything like that. Guess what happens to them?
They die.
They fucking starve to death.
Yeah.
So
they die from overbreathing.
Yeah. And then there's stupid shit like snake handling, where they take this passage from Mark. They say they will pick up serpents with their hands, and if they drink any deadly thing, it will not harm them, which they interpreted to mean as true followers of Jesus play with snakes, and that's how they live their life, and that's something they do in their Sunday school class, I guess, is play with asps. And you know what happens to them?
They fucking die.
They fucking get bit and die. It's like, not only is it on its face completely retarded, but it's a complete misunderstanding of what that scripture actually said. It's
it's just one interpretation, and
I don't know how you could misinterpret this, because like the rest of the thing is talking about the missionaries of the Lord. They're going out to deliver their message, and these following things will not be obstacles to them, including snakes biting them.
Yeah, but they think that they're all spreading the gospel. I mean, that's one of the things about Christianity. They all think that they're all the missionaries,
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yes, because they have the truth and everybody else is wrong.
Exactly.
So and therefore we're obligated to save their souls. I mean, I guess I get that.
So you know what we should do is we should actually have a poisonous snake around. So if people show up at our door, then you read that passage to them, and then hand them the snake.
Yeah, if you're a true missionary of God, then you won't die. Then I'll listen to what you have to say.
Let this guy bite you, and if you don't die, then I'll go to your church.
Yeah, and if you die, I'm not driving you to the hospital. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite ones that I heard recently, due to things like the earthquake and tsunami in Japan and all these tornadoes in the Midwest. Some Mormons that I know, who will remain nameless, we're talking about the fact that in all these disasters, we haven't heard of one Mormon missionary getting hurt. I'd like to see the data there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they got hurt just like anyone else.
It's like, well, you haven't.
Yeah. Doesn't mean they didn't.
Yeah.
Lots of shit you don't hear about with missionaries, like missionaries getting into fights and running over people and killing
getting
people.
shot.
Well, and plus the fact that there's 55,000 of them in a world of almost 7 billion people.
Yeah. Yeah, statistically, that's not very many people. And the fact that they're out on the streets all day, I guess increases their odds of being out and about while things are going down. So, depending on the nature of the emergency, yeah. I surely haven't given it that much thought because I don't give a fuck. Oh, yeah. Some people believe that God's ways are higher than man's ways, so they can disregard man-made laws. One of my favorite examples is some idiot who built his church after the manner of God and not according to any particular building code, so his fucking church collapsed. Fortunately, no one was inside when it collapsed, but it's like, you're an idiot.
God.
It's like, well, unfortunately, he wasn't inside. Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about one on the website about lightning.
Yeah, I posted a thing about lightning rods being seen as something that was to thwart the will of God. If you have if you have a lightning rod, basically deflecting lightning away from someplace where it will cause a lot of damage, that you're taking away God's power to just destroy things from the sky.
You're neutering God.
Yeah.
Wow, Jesus, convert to a more powerful God.
Yeah.
He's getting defeated by metal spires. What the fuck?
Yeah. And it's funny because the churches would generally be the highest buildings in the area, so those were the ones most likely to be struck by lightning. And it's also where they would store things like, gunpowder. So there was a case of a lightning strike at a church that detonated, I think it was 100 tons of gunpowder, and blew up a sixth of the city. And and they're like, well, the lightning rod technology was available to them. They just thought that it was, it would be unholy. It's like challenging God, saying
It was God's will that a sixth of the city be destroyed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I guess it was the evil sixth.
Yes. Right around the church.
Yeah. Who pay more for real estate to get their asses blown up. By dimwits. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. One final thought that I had was, we almost lost the Thriller music video because of some stupid ass fucktardian dickwad Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, as an observing Jacksonian, I found this very offensive. The Thriller music video wasn't the first music video, but it was the first huge music video, one to make it a real production. Before there was video killed the radio star bullshit.
Yeah.
So it was very revolutionary, and it was
instead of just being some eye candy to go along with the song, it was actually trying to be an artistic expression.
Yeah. And it was telling a story, not to mention a great song and very iconic. We almost lost that
oh my God.
because
What would
Jehovah's
prison
Witnesses
inmates in Thailand do without it?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. We almost lost it because the stupid Jesus-y witnesses saw zombies and said, "Oh, that means he's raising people from the dead. He's using witchcraft and endorsing the occult." And Jackson almost destroyed every copy of Thriller to appease his church. He was raised Jehovah's Witness, and that's what you do. You obey the church and shit. But he was able to convince them that if you put a disclaimer on it, that it'd be okay, saying that it's the typical all these characters are fictional, even the ones that look like real people, if it's a coincidence, and we also, by the way, don't endorse the occult in any way, and that's how that video was saved. One of the best music videos of all times. We almost lost that. And it makes me wonder what else came close and what have we lost because of this stupid bullshit.
Yeah, well, like book burning and stuff
Oh,
like that.
my
Like you
God.
lose all sorts of information and art from the past.
All those Beatles records.
Yeah. Well, and there was the Al Qaeda blew up that huge Buddha statue. It's been a while, but it was just this gigantic thing carved into the face of a mountain. It was like 300 feet tall or something like that, and they just blew it up because they're like, "Oh, it's a graven image of a false god, so we got to get rid of it."
It makes me angry, and so overall, there's plenty of bad things you could say about religion. I mean, overall, the thing is that your quality of life gets drastically reduced when you are a person of faith, and people look on it like it's a virtue, like it's a really good thing, like you're somehow incomplete if you're not a believer. But I could tell you, I was miserable for certainly the last few years of it, but I was very unhappy most of my life.
Well, people
because of
generally
that.
will say like, "Oh, I go to the church because it provides these things for me," but they don't take into consideration the things that they're giving up to get there.
Yes.
It's just like do some pros and cons.
Yeah, it's false hope at a cost.
And they
Yeah,
don't
big
actually
cost.
look at it after the fact objectively of, am I actually getting these results out of it?
Yeah, that's what they think they're getting.
They
and
think
then-
they are. Yeah.
And it's like, you can't be sure about what you're getting, but you can be sure about what you're losing.
I'm so happy about my life because I'm in the church. Are you really?
Yeah.
Are you happy?
It's like, well, and is it because of the church, or is it that you just have a good life?
Or is it in spite of the church?
Yeah.
It's like, because I feel good. Well, you feel good sometimes, but you feel bad more often and more powerfully when you believe that you're failing and falling short.
Well, yeah, and it's when you feel bad, then you have to tell yourself that you're feeling good because
Yeah,
to
and you
admit
also
that
have to
you're feeling
project that
bad.
you're feeling good to other people. It's bullshit. It's
to
also,
admit that you're feeling bad is to say like, I'm doing things wrong.
yeah. So much stupidity and hypocrisy. It makes me want to vomit up my Adwala. I personally have felt so much better since leaving religion itself because I can't help but think of like everyone who's a believer, kind of like the Cybermen from Doctor Who, where they just there's all of their emotion stuff are missing and they are in bondage and they have no freedom at all.
And they just see a very limited scope of what this great, grand world is all about.
And if it's something they don't like, they say delete.
Yeah. Exterminate.
Yeah, I just remember hearing a lot of people saying, how like the whole reason why they bring their religions upon everybody else and bug the shit out of them and knock on their doors is because, the religion brings me so much happiness. Wouldn't you be so happy too? And on the other side, when people leave, it's like, they don't realize all the happiness they gave up, and they pretend like they're happy, but they're really miserable on the inside. And it's like, the other way around.
Because I was pretty devout. I was doing all the things that I was supposed to, and God wasn't keeping his end of the deal, right? I was still miserable because the system doesn't work. It's broken. It's,
Especially if you're not, you don't fit in the cookie cutter mold that everybody else does. I know as, a non-super conservative, super, traditional guy, I never fit in with the religious crowds.
yeah, because you're too intelligent and you're interesting. I mean, life isn't a fucking back row, by the way. Like, it shouldn't be this pre-programmed thing where you go step by step by step. You should do the things that make sense and things that will make you happy. And religion really gets in the way of that. Any brand of superstition is going to try and control the way you think or do things or spend your resources and all that. But it's like, well, it gives them comfort. Really? People are still very distraught at funerals, regardless of what religious service you're going to. All of them. You know why? Because death is a tough thing to deal with.
Yeah.
And
and if you get this, if you somehow are able to use religion to lessen that pain, is that a good thing?
no.
Exactly. It's
Well, and generally what it's always seemed to me like, I went to a funeral pretty recently from a friend's dad, and watching everybody at this funeral, it wasn't like their pain was gone because of the religion. It was like instead of dealing with their pain, they were dealing with trying to convince themselves that their justification, their reasoning why this wasn't a big loss was actually true. Like, no, we'll see him again, right? In the afterlife, right? Like, seriously, we will. I know it. It's like they
Yeah.
were trying to convince themselves of their own beliefs.
It's like a very light anesthetizing of the pain.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a bad
Not a
painkiller.
curing of the failing organ. It's just painkillers.
Yeah.
And a bad one at that.
Yeah. It's,
Getting hooked on painkillers.
well, yeah, yeah. Religion is a deadly addiction. It's
And we're here to help people through their withdrawal symptoms.
yeah, seriously, because kicking that habit is actually quite difficult, mentally and emotionally and physically.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, even after they've left for years, deal with the guilt problems and dealing with their warped worldview and
Or stomach viruses they picked up while working as a missionary in a third world country for something.
And now, our fatwas of the week.
My fatwa this week is on George Lopez. He's just not funny.
my fatwa this week. It's going to be on the Bradley method. Those of you who haven't had kids or haven't had friends who have had kids who've had made you deal with this bullshit. It's nothing particularly with the Bradley method itself. It's kind of a naturalistic approach to childbirth. But there's one specific thing about it that I really have a problem with, and that's the fact that they really push people to have their kids at home with a midwife instead of, at the fucking hospital where there are doctors and where if anything goes wrong, they can actually care for the kid or the mother. So it's like, you know what? Yeah, let's try and be more natural because, natural is always better. What's the name of that?
Ding! The naturalistic fallacy.
Yes. Instead of being somewhere where we can make sure that everybody's safe and that no serious harm is going to come to these kids, let's have them at home where if something goes wrong, oh, fuck, now what?
The way that we're delivering babies nowadays, isn't it kind of like the worst possible way where you're like laying down and trying to push rather than letting gravity do the work and all that?
Supposed to squat and shit out babies? Is that what you're saying?
Uh-huh. I mean, you're like fighting gravity and like it seems like you're working way too hard to get that thing out of you.
I don't know. The closest thing I've had to giving birth is just taking a really big shit, so I don't know.
Which is almost the same thing.
Almost.
Yeah. Well, in your mother's case, it was.
Oh!
All right. This week, I will be declaring jihad on canned laughter and canned applause. It's got to stop. It's so irritating to me because it's like I first ran across it recently, and it got me irritated about this. Is I was watching some old television series that looks like it would have been produced by the same or similar people around the same time as like Saved by the Bell, where nothing is funny. It's really poorly written, and it seemed like the producers thought that we had to have a laugh every 5 seconds, regardless of what's going on in the story. So it fucks up the pacing of it, but the shit's not funny, and it's all this really contrived, forced jokes, and it's really, and the concept that you have to like be told to laugh it offends me a little bit too, because if something's actually funny, people are going to hopefully get it, and I'll laugh. I'll get a natural response because it's the natural laughter that really has the effect on the mind and all that stuff, right?
This is where you laugh.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm being told how to consume my media, and that pisses me off. But and so there was that, and the whole can applause. Like I don't know why it matters if it's filled in front of a live studio audience. I don't give a shit. I want the quality of the program to come through, and they're trying so hard to please these people who don't really matter in the long run. And it annoys me, but I was also watching. I was walking by while TV was on, and some really crappy comedian was on. Like it's one of those like everything he said like, that's what the whole thing was, and it was like this is really bad because
Was it,
like
Mind of Mencia? Oh, George Lopez show.
yeah. It could have been any one of those. That seems to be like the trend now, where they think like we have to keep them constantly in this fast pace. And it's like no, a good comedian is going to be like either telling a story or they're going to have a setup and then a payoff.
Oh, was it
right?
Tyler Perry?
It was almost any goddamn thing. Lately.
Oh, was it Jay Leno?
Yeah, and it's so irritating because it's like, you know how when someone tells you that you say a lot, or someone says a lot when they talk, and that's all you hear when they talk after hearing that. So now now that I'm so irritated with this canned laughter or this constant just...
Now you hear it everywhere.
Yeah, now it's always like this call and response that you always hear every 6 or 7 seconds on any stand-up comedian or any television series, like da 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 ah, da la 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 ah, yeah, apparently SpongeBob is in every audience. It drives me up the fucking wall. And anyone who uses a laugh track or canned applause is a dimwit.
Thank you for joining us this week. We'll now leave you with the gift of tongues. Nobody feels my pain, and I stand inside the rain. Everybody knows the baby got new clothes, but lately I see her ribbons and her bows have fallen from her curls. She tastes just like a woman. Yes, she does.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I've learned, it's never trust someone who reads the same book over and over again.
I mean, it worked out well for us because we have penises. So much stupidity and hypocrisy. It makes me want to vomit up my Adwala. Oh, I hate hearing my own voice from the past. Shut up.
The comments made by the hosts and other participants are the opinions of the individuals and not those of any corporate entity. All data and information provided in this program is for informational purposes only. The Church of Awesome makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, currentness, suitability, or validity of any information in this program and will not be liable for any errors, omissions, or delays in this information or any losses, injuries, or damages arising from its display or use. All information is provided on an as-is basis. If you like what you've heard in today's sermon, come visit us at churchofawesome.com or follow us on Twitter at COA Podcast.